Security is not what you have. It is how much you can lose without your life fundamentally changing. By that measure, most people have considerably less of it than they believe, and the feeling of security they carry is in significant part a product that was sold to them by the same institutions whose operation creates the insecurity in the first place. That is not a conspiracy. It is a business model, and recognizing it does not make the insecurity go away. But it does change what you are looking at when you notice the anxiety that lives just underneath ordinary daily life, the low hum of financial worry that most working adults in wealthy countries carry so constantly they have stopped hearing it as unusual. Begin with what security actually is before discussing whether you have it. The economist's version: security is the capacity to absorb a negative shock, job loss, illness, unexpected expense, economic downturn, without a cascade failure of your financial position. The buffer between an event and a crisis. This buffer has a specific size. It can be measured, and in most wealthy countries, for most households, it is smaller than the feeling of security would suggest. A 2023 Federal Reserve survey found that roughly 37% of American adults could not cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing or selling something. Not a catastrophe. A minor emergency, one car repair, one medical copay, one appliance failure. The margin between stability and crisis for more than a third of households in the world's largest economy is $400. The feeling of security is not calibrated to the reality of security. It is calibrated to normalcy. If nothing bad has happened recently, the nervous system registers safety. The threat does not have to disappear for the feeling of danger to fade. It only has to remain potential rather than actual. This is why financial fragility can be almost invisible until it isn't, why the person who was fine last month is in crisis this month, and why the crisis from the outside appears sudden when it was structurally present for years. Now look at where security used to come from before the current arrangements existed. For most of human history in most places, security was primarily relational. It came from land, the capacity to grow food, which meant that however bad the market got, starvation required specific additional disasters rather than just unemployment. It came from extended family networks that pooled risk across multiple earners and multiple households. It came from community obligation, the expectation that neighbors and kin would provide in emergency, rooted in the understanding that roles could reverse. It came from craft and skill, the knowledge that what you knew how to do was needed and would continue to be needed. None of these sources was reliable in absolute terms. Crop failures happened. Extended families collapsed under cumulative stress. Communities excluded outsiders. Skills became obsolete. The historical record of pre-modern economic life contains enormous suffering. The romanticization of pre-modern security is a different error from underestimating current insecurity. But the form of security was different. It was embedded in relationships and land rather than in money. It did not depend on continuous employment by an entity that could terminate the relationship at any time. And its primary vulnerabilities, harvest failure, epidemic war, were different from the primary vulnerabilities of modern employment-dependent security, which is continuous exposure to the decisions of employers, markets, and financial institutions over which the individual has no meaningful control. The welfare state was built in the mid-20th century as a collective response to this vulnerability. Social insurance, unemployment benefits, public pensions, universal health care, disability support was the political answer to the question, what happens to people when the market stops wanting them? The answer, arrived at through political struggle after the Depression demonstrated what happens without it, was the collective absorbs the shock that the individual cannot. This was not charity. It was risk pooling at civilizational scale. Logic is insurance, applied to the risks that private insurance would not cover, the risk of structural unemployment, of permanent disability, of outliving one's savings. The welfare state converted individual catastrophic risk into collective manageable risk. It worked. Life expectancy, poverty rates, and measures of economic security in the countries that built robust welfare states are markedly better than in those that did not, and the relationship is persistent across decades. Now hold the counter-argument at full weight. The welfare state has genuine costs that are not only fiscal. Dependency, in which the expectation of collective support reduces the individual's own provision for contingency, is real in some populations and some conditions. The moral hazard argument, when costs are socialized, the incentive to avoid the cost-generating behavior diminishes. Some people make choices under the safety net that they would not make without it, more risk-taking in employment, less personal saving, earlier exit from the labor force. Whether these effects are large enough to matter significantly against the benefits of the insurance function is contested empirically. The evidence tends to show that moral hazard in social insurance is considerably smaller than its critics claim, but it is not zero. The design of welfare systems affects this. Better designed systems maintain incentives to work while providing genuine flaws. But design is difficult, and political systems rarely produce ideal designs. The deeper argument against welfare state security is about what produces genuine security in the long run. Productive investment, economic growth, and competitive labor markets, on this account, create more real security for more people over time than transfer systems funded by taxing the productive economy. The countries that have grown most rapidly have generally done so under conditions of market discipline rather than extensive social protection. The direction of causality between welfare state generosity and economic dynamism is genuinely contested, and the evidence is not clean enough for certainty in either direction. These are real arguments. They deserve engagement rather than dismissal. Here is the floor move. The financialization of security, the conversion of collective risk pooling into individual financial product purchasing, is the defining economic story of the last 40 years. And it has an internal logic that is important to understand. When pension provision shifted from defined benefit to defined contribution, when the employer's guarantee of a specific retirement income was replaced by an account whose value depends on what financial markets do, the risk of retirement income shortfall was transferred from the employer to the employee. The defined contribution account is marketed as freedom. You own your retirement, you can see it grow, you can make choices about it, and there is something real in that. The defined benefit pension was also a form of dependency, and the institution might fail, but the transfer of risk also transferred it onto the party least equipped to manage it. The individual employee is not trained in investment management. They are susceptible to poor timing, buying high in bull markets, selling low in panics. They bear the full cost of sequence of returns risk, the specific risk of retiring into a down market. They have no pooling advantage. Each individual's retirement outcome depends on their individual market timing rather than on the collective smoothing of a properly managed pension fund. The financial services industry benefited from this transfer. Individual accounts generate management fees. More accounts with more individual decision-making generate more transaction fees. The industry that absorbed the defined contribution assets had a structural interest in the transition that produced them. The marketing of individual financial products as security is not false. They can provide security. But they are also the mechanism through which the security that was previously collective and guaranteed became individual and contingent. The industry sells the solution to a problem that the reorganization of employment partly created. Insurance follows the same structure. The more insecure the employment environment, the more precarious the work. The less comprehensive the employer-provided benefits, the more gaps in the floor, the larger the market for products that sell protection against specific risks. The person in secure employment with comprehensive benefits needs less insurance. The person in precarious employment with no benefits needs more. The growth of the insurance industry as a proportion of economic activity tracks the growth of employment precarity. Insecurity is a market. The market has an interest in it. Now look at what this means for the actual texture of your daily financial life. You probably hold some financial products that are marketed as security, a savings account, an insurance policy, perhaps a pension or retirement account. These are not bad things. Within the current arrangements, holding them is genuinely better than not holding them. But examine what they actually provide. The savings account provides buffer against specific small shocks, up to the level of the savings, and only for as long as the shocks stay small. The insurance policy provides protection against the specific risks it covers, under the specific terms of the policy, subject to the insurer's decision about whether the claim qualifies. The retirement account provides income in retirement if the markets cooperate, and if you do not need the money before then, and if inflation does not erode its purchasing power, and if you live long enough to use it, but not so long that you outlive it. Each product has conditions. The security each provides is conditional and bounded. The unconditional security, the genuine floor beneath which you cannot fall regardless of market performance, regardless of employer decisions, regardless of health events, is provided, to the extent it exists, by the public systems that the same political economy that created precarious work has been steadily pressuring. The anxiety you feel about money, the specific quality of it, the way it appears at 3 a.m., the way it colors decisions you make about work and risk and relationships, is not a personal failure of equanimity. It is information about your actual position. It is the nervous system accurately reading the buffer between you and a cascade failure, and finding the buffer smaller than the feeling of normalcy suggested. The question is not how to feel more secure, the question is harder than that. What would it actually take, not financially but structurally, for the security you feel to be as real as the feeling suggests it is? And is that thing available to you? And if it is not, what does that tell you about the gap between the security the system promises and the security the system provides?